Well, sometimes I like to hook them with things even like fresh, bright, lively, aromatic, fun, playful. Put those in the midst with maybe some tasting notes, so it kind of brings it alive. Like, is this fresh? Is it bright, or is it more earthy, deep, dark?
Got it.
It's things that evoke a bit of feeling or sensation versus just taste. And I think that can brighten up some tasting notes.
Hey guys, this is Sid Patel, CEO of Beverage Trade Network and Bartender Spirits Awards. We are live here from day one at Bartender Spirits Awards from San Francisco. I have Virginia Miller here, one of the famous personalities, I would say, out of San Francisco, who's really spent most of her life on the streets, going to the bars and restaurants. So she really knows the pulse of the consumer and where the next trend is and so on, right? One of the unique things which she's really known for is as well as writing content about what's going on in the culture. So I think let's take this chance to help other distillers and brand owners on what kind of stories she thinks that in the next 6 months or in 2023 would grab some attention. Virginia, thanks for joining me here.
It's so good to be with you, Sid.
Great.
Yes.
Let's give a little introduction about yourself. What kind of different hats do you wear?
I wear a lot of hats. So I am a writer professionally for 17 years, but my whole life, since I was 5,
Nice.
I wanted to be an author, as I would say. I was always born a bit of an old soul, but didn't realize it was going to be about food and drink until my 20s. And when my passion for researching and going everywhere and tasting everything, I always say I fall in love with cultures through what they eat, drink, and listen to, because music's my other greatest love. And it's the quickest way in, I think. I really do eat everything, I taste everything, and I had such an insatiable curiosity. The more I'd taste, the more it led to. And the countries I'd be in, the more people wanted to show me when they realized not only would I try everything, but that I really loved their culture and knew something about it. And then the more I'd learn, the more obsessed I'd get. So it just grew. I started with I was one of those early bloggers, newsletter, 17 years
You had
ago.
a WordPress blog?
Yep,
Nice.
WordPress, exactly. And then it was, quickly I got a job at The Guardian after that. I was in HR and I became an HR manager there, and they kind of gave me a little article or two on the side and liked what I did.
Nice.
And it turned into a column, and then I became their restaurant critic after the critic of 13 years left. So I'd kind of HR by day and weekly restaurant review by night. But meanwhile, for 22 years really, as long as I've lived in San Francisco, because San Francisco was such a leader in spirits and cocktails, really San Francisco, New York, and I grew up suburbs of New York and LA. New York and San Francisco were really going strong 20 years ago, and I started to get into cocktails. Same with food, and to me it was an extension of food at first, and then the more I got into it, the more I started being curious about.
Did you learn about it? Did you do any course?
No, I didn't do any courses. I was tasting. There were so many bar masters here back then who were teaching me, who were traveling around the world, bringing obscure spirits back, making incredible cocktails. And of course in California, very produce driven as well as classics. So I'd learn the spirit as classics and I'd learn the produce driven. And first I was just interested in the ingredients, and then I started to go, oh, well, what botanicals in that gin are you playing off of? And the next thing you knew, I started getting in terms of, in addition to food press trips, I started getting invited on distillery press trips.
Nice.
The more I learned about distilling, the more I fell in love with it. And the next thing I knew, and I'm a big wine geek too, but spirits is my first love and drink. Spirits and cocktails for me, the diversity, the range, the smell of agave fields versus peat bogs in Scotland versus botanicals in gin. It's all so different. And agave roasting, each one is so emblematic of terroir and of the countries they're from. And so I fell hard. So I started judging back in those days as well. I was judging cocktails and dining competitions 15 plus years ago, but spirits started about 12.
Nice.
And so I do a lot of the big SF World Spirits, IWSC in London, ADI. I've been an ADI craft distilling, been a lead judge for years there, 12 years for them. So I write for all those type of magazines, gin magazine, whiskey magazine, distiller magazine, and I write every issue.
So let's go right in the writing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so people can get value on some tactical stuff. I'll throw in 3 areas. Maybe you give me your philosophy of what a good copy over there should look like. So let's talk about a blog post of a distillery, right? So you have a blog section. You need a big 500 to 100 piece stories. What are the 3 or 4 things that you would keep your stories around?
Of course, at this stage, I'm looking for innovation or things that haven't been done before. But I'm also looking to celebrate longevity. So I'm looking either for distillers that have a long history and how have they evolved and where are they going and why is it still relevant and how have they kept relevant. Or I'm looking for how are they innovating? What boundaries might they be pushing in their spirit category? And so for me, those are, I hate to use the word hooks because I'm not about the clickbait. I've been a full-time editor many places, but I hate to be driven by clickbait. But I still am looking for that story to either be around the innovation or the longevity and how they've been able to stay alive. Because I think both of those angles are important for the industry.
Got it.
Both what do we do to perfect and hone ourselves, and what do we do to innovate and push the boundaries in our given category or field.
Fair enough. Now, on the shelf talkers, right, the marketing notes, the two-liners that consumers look at in bottle shops or maybe in drinks menus.
Right.
So what's your theory of how would you write a shelf talker for your gin brand if you had?
Yeah, and that's fun because I'm Virginia. My nickname's always been Gin, so I feel a special, I love all spirits, but a special love for gin. For me, even when I'm doing judging and tasting notes, or when I'm writing, I have a bottle column at Distiller Magazine where I review spirits every month, cover a lot of bars and restaurants as well. And I don't like to use too highfalutin words. I like to keep to the key flavor profiles. Is it tart? Is it acidic? Is it lean? Is it full? Is it sweet? Earthy. I don't like to get into, some of the terms we might use in the industry or, geek out about.
What about some asking for a sale, like try one of the best gins you can have under $12?
Sure.
Throw us some nice writing hooks that they can add that the consumer will try.
Oh goodness. Well, sometimes I like to hook them with things even like fresh, bright, lively, aromatic, fun, playful. Put those in the midst with maybe some tasting notes, so it kind of brings it alive. Like, is this fresh? Is it bright, or is it more earthy, deep, dark?
Got it.
It's things that evoke a bit of feeling or sensation versus just taste. And I think that can brighten up some tasting notes. I also love if there's anything playful to compare it to, nostalgia, favorite dishes. If this might remind you, actually some gins I love have that, cumin forward where I'm like, pairs beautifully with curry and, a curry and gin and tonic, and maybe that's the food writer in me. I was a restaurant critic first and still am. And it's bring the food memories in,
Understood.
Bring those in. And I think that brings people more of a connection without having to make it flowery or overly descriptive.
Great. Which touched based on, you've been judging for many years now. You see some trends, you see some development of categories like, non-alcoholic or even, I would say, agave and mezcal and tequila you must have seen before it started, right?
Yes, and funny enough, I do a lot of consulting as well. So I've been working on agave projects the last few years in tequila and Arandas.
So give us your summary about RTDs and how do you see this evolving and what's your pick for the next 3 years, let's say? What do you think will be so big?
Oh, goodness. It is amazing to see the evolution. RTDs I've been judging about 6-7 years, and the quality has gone up. When we first started, oh my goodness, it was just terrible. They'd all taste like fake lime in the margaritas, but now there's so much quality. I'm seeing innovation in terms of distilleries making RTDs and partnering with bartenders so they can get more creative drinks out there. I would love to, and am already seeing some people do more creative drinks. What I'm weary of is seeing the 5 millionth canned Negroni or Paloma or Margarita. It's like, let's mix it up and show some innovation there because there's a million cocktails that could be done. And I understand we can go too niche, but at the same time, I love the distilleries I'm seeing partnering with bartenders in their region. If you're a small craft distiller, I say, who's around you? Who are the great talents in the city nearby or in your city? And you can maybe partner with them on a more creative RTD or take a classic and put a spin on it.
Collab and recipe and all that.
Yeah, and I think that's more interesting in RTDs. I am really weary there's a lot of great versions already of the classics out there now. And of course, non-alcoholic, as you mentioned, NA has really more exploded the last 3 years, I'd say.
You think that will continue and that will remain a category?
Yes, I think there are some statistics that some of the younger generation, 20-somethings now, are actually drinking less than the previous 20-somethings. You know, there is that sign, which is scary for some of us in drink and spirits, I know, but I think it's continuing to innovate there, because same thing, I still think there's a big way to go quality-wise, but it's growing all the time and by leaps and bounds. And I think for distillers to have an NA in their portfolio, I think is wise. What is your best-selling spirit, maybe? And could you do an NA version of that? Is it possible? How do you get it quality? It's going to push all your boundaries. Body is a terrible issue. I always find a lot of NAs are very thin and watery, and it's hard to get that without glycerin or sugar, or get that body. But I'm seeing things happening more and more. So if you could find a way to play with that, I think NA is in demand. Bartenders are doing entire sections now in their menus of NA, not just one cocktail, not just two. So I think bartenders want it, and the consumer wants it, and the trend I don't think is going away anytime soon.
Nice. Like when you walk in, or when you're doing a silent walk and just writing a story for, let's say, any newspaper or anything, what kind of things do you check for? Like, just give us something that for bar managers to sort of take.
Yes. Oh, so many things. I mean, obviously, and those of us who have been in the industry a long time, in the bar industry, this is the common word for the pros, is hospitality. Doesn't matter if your drinks are amazing if you do not have hospitality. I would agree with that. I do also want the drinks to be amazing, because last year I passed 13,000 restaurants. I've been to over 13,000 restaurants around the world. I've been to well more bars, even more bars than that, because I can fit more of those in a day than I can eat even, and just do a bunch of tasting. So for sure, the ones that are not friendly, connected, there's no point, because I say there's so many other great bars you can go to. Sure. So if you're not keeping that core, that spirit of hospitality, this is the hospitality industry. But the drinks I also do look for, because the other thing I'm weary of is bars that just do the same old cocktails. And that's unfortunately been a trend a bit since pandemic, and I get it. Sometimes getting too creative or too wacky is cost prohibitive, and everyone's just trying to make up the difference. But again, if I have my billionth Boulevardier, I could scream sometimes. I can make them better at home a lot of times. I have many hundreds of spirits at home. I would rather still see your touch, your creativity, your region, your city. Even if you're just doing classics, and everything should be inspired off of a classic ethos, I still want to see your spin. I love seeing super creative cocktails, but it does take a pro palate. You have to have some experience to take 7 ingredients and make it work, let's say. But I am looking for innovation. I do want to write about that. 20 plus years into this, I don't want another Negroni. I want variation.
You know, when they say, we've all heard the word, this bar has a great vibe. So how do you evaluate vibe?
Well, yes, it's partly crowd, like who's in there, but I'm not looking for scene. I think I'm with you. I prefer more vibe than scene. Music to me is crucial. It is one of my greatest passions. I actually pay a lot of attention to the music a bar is playing. What's on in the background, even if it's low and chill, it can really set the personality and the tone. And I notice when there's certain very obscure genres or sub-genres that are playing, and I give kudos to a bar for that. Obviously, lighting does matter. I like it a little lighter so I can take my photos of your cocktails, but I understand mood lighting and dim is nice and better for evoking conversation and relaxation. But I also look for relaxation, whether I'm at a dive bar or I'm at, upscale, molecular, fancy, whatever. If it feels stiff, if it feels, to me, even when I was 21, I was kind of born a jazz and martinis girl before I even knew what a martini tasted like. But I've always liked a little bit of class. I don't like clamoring at the bar and fighting to get a drink. I don't like everyone standing. So for me, I love seats and all of that. But it's not about it all being upscale, but I would say relaxed as opposed to that. I'm here to, especially if I was just a consumer, and I'm not. If I was, I'd be looking for relaxation, a night off, a break with friends. I'm not looking to fight for a drink or feel like I have to stand in the corner and try to set my glassware down and do, my phone and I'd rather sit and relax. So I am looking for those kinds of things, and I understand some spaces are tiny and difficult, but I don't mind reservations for bars that way. I don't like, I'm weary. I was covering the speakeasy trends and all those things when they first started, like 20 years ago, 20 plus years ago. And so I do weary of snobbery with passwords and whatever. But I'm all for regulation. If you want to keep it peaceful, if you want to regulate the crowds or make sure everyone has a seat, I don't mind a bar doing that. Just do reservations, make it reasonable. Don't make it impossible to get in, but make it, make it so that it's civilized if that's what you're going to do.
True. I think it's so many times you give up on drinks when there is a whole bunch of crowd there, right? So you just forget it.
And for me, covering it, I mean, we'll just say if you want, journalists to cover it. I mean, if I'm going to three bars a night and 3 restaurants that day, and I'm the chairperson for World's 50 Best Restaurants, it's like I do a lot of these 4-hour Michelin kind of meals. I don't have the time, unfortunately. So if I'm in your city and it's going to be that way, I'm moving on. I'm going to go to the next. Now, I thoroughly research and vet my bars. I don't just show up. It's one of those things where I know where I want to go and I'm intentional about it. And I've already narrowed down to what I think might be the best. I've looked at menus. I've talked to people. I've researched. But still, if it's that crazy, I'm already like, well, and I understand on Friday and Saturday, it can be. I try to avoid those nights, but when I'm traveling to a city, sometimes don't have the choice. But I would say, if it's too chaotic, and some people are going for that. They want the party.
True.
But that's not what I'm looking. I am looking for the hospitality, the vibe, the quality of drinks, the innovation, the passion of the bartenders, and I can see that from a team. I can taste it in the glass, can see it in the glassware, the garnishes. The thoughtfulness, even the menus, I can tell sometimes when there's a lot of care.
Is it important or no?
It is important, but it's not the most important thing. Obviously, none of us want overpriced, and cities I love, like London and all of that, are very difficult when you get a lot of New York and London, a lot of $20, $25 cocktails, and you're like, that's very mediocre. I have better than that every day for 15. So that does matter, but I also put it in context of where I am, context of the city.
In Mayfair, you can't expect
Mayfair is crazy. Exactly.
True.
So I do put it in context, but it also, the value should be there for what you're getting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.